Welcome back to Purpose Project. I'm Leslie Pagel, and this season we're exploring what it means to live life to the beat of our own drum. Today's episode is a little bit different because my guest is not just someone that I admire, she is also someone that I call a friend. In this episode, I sit down with Michele Meyer. Michele is one of those people who moves through life with the kind of freedom that's hard to miss. And over the years, I've often found myself in awe of that, but I've never asked her how she does it until now. Let's take a listen. Michele, thank you for coming on Purpose Project. I am really looking forward to our conversation because we've never had a conversation about this in our friendship. And so let's just dive in.
All right, let's do it.
First question is, how might people say that you push up against social norms?
I guess I just do what I want. And it's not to be spiteful or to be difficult.
Right.
I think that when I examine my life, one of my biggest problems and maybe one of my superpowers is that I have zero patience for anything. And so I just run out of patience. And so I'm probably would be described as being assertive and dominant and maybe even aggressive, like professionally, but it's just because I have no patience. And I can't stand for people to be indecisive or not make up their minds or not do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so my impatience just kind of makes me like speak out and try to get the ball rolling. Like herding cats.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not a demure, soft-spoken woman, but it's not like I'm not like that on the inside. It's just I have no patience. And so I just want to just keep moving forward through life, and if people get in my way, I push them out of the way, I guess.
Nice.
Just keep going. But I think it's more to have to do with just not having any patience.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
But that's my own self-reflection.
But when I look back into moments that you have shared with me about your childhood and even what you went to college for and your job now, like you work in construction, a woman in construction, like that's not the norm,
no.
I guess. And it sounds like from your perspective that you're being impatient, it can't just be the only thing.
I've always had an attitude, I guess. But I'm not like in a bad way. You know, I've always felt very comfortable to speak my mind, and I was raised that way.
Okay.
And even though traditionally my mom probably wouldn't be seen as a feminist, but she kind of raised me to be my own person. Regardless of my gender or regardless of my situation.
Yeah.
I've just kind of grown up, just not taking crap, I guess, for people and just plowing ahead.
Yeah.
If an obstacle gets in my way, either I divert around it and deal with it later, or I just crash through it.
I want to peel back some of this because, so you mentioned your mom helped raise you to just not let anything stand in your way and not have any limitations, it sounds like. So that to me says, as a child, you're growing up and you're allowing for whatever you want, which is not always what social norms are about, right?
Right.
And so was there something in your childhood that gave you the courage, I guess, to...
So growing up, I had very few boundaries, and I kind of just ran feral in a way, you know, just like as being a young child, you know, in the neighborhood, playing with friends, I didn't have any limitations. Like behind our houses is a forest, and as a child it was humongous. You know, now I don't even know if it exists anymore. The neighborhood probably grew, you know, through it. But none of the other little girls on my street were allowed to go in the woods. I was the only little girl that was allowed to do whatever I wanted.
Right.
And so I ended up playing with the boys because they were allowed to go in the woods. And so we built forts, and that was my childhood, was being in the woods, either by myself or with the boys in the neighborhood, but mostly by myself. I just loved to go in the woods, and I would have my own adventures. I would take some bread in a little bag, and I loved to pretend like I was like Laura Ingalls or an Indian or just alone in the woods. I just loved that. And when you play like that, you know, there were times that I climbed trees and half fell out of trees and was hanging by a branch by one hand, and there was nobody to help me, you know, and you just learn how to like figure it out, right? And not get hurt, you know, or whatever. And so I was always allowed to develop my own self-reliance and problem-solving skills and just be wild. And, you know, I don't think kids really get that opportunity anymore. Right. So I think that was a big part of it. I'm happiest in the woods and in nature. I feel at home there. I'm very thankful for my parents for that. And they raised my brother the same way. We lived in a different house and it was different woods. But my brother, you know, would always play in the woods by himself, and they would let him take chainsaws in the woods when he was like 9-10 years old to like build a trail. He was like, whatever. I don't know how we survived, but we did. And I think it made us better for it. But so those skills were developed real early.
Yeah. You said we didn't have any boundaries. And I'm wondering at what point, or if at any point, did you discover that there are boundaries surrounding me that I didn't know existed?
I guess when I was in the 4th grade, we moved and ended up in a Catholic school. And I think that was the first time I kind of came up against like boundaries in life and in beliefs. I didn't like it. I didn't like the teachings. I didn't like what the nuns taught us. Mm-hmm. In 4th grade, my 4th grade teacher told us that all Native Americans go to hell because they're heathens and they don't believe in God and they all go to hell. And when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an Indian so bad.
Right.
And that really stuck with me. And that was kind of the first time I started questioning, I guess, society and social norms, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was like,
in 4th grade.
Yeah. I was like, that is not what I believe. And instead of my beliefs changing, they got stronger. And I really started to question all of that stuff. And at a very young age, probably 6th grade, 7th grade, when you do Catholic confirmation, I can't remember, but at that point I was like, I mean, I went through with the sacrament because it was important to my parents, but I did not believe in any of that and did not want to be molded by any of that. So that was a big...
Did your parents know this?
Not really. You know, okay. It never really felt like they would understand. Uh-huh. But it was all kinds of things. It was science and things that my parents didn't believe in. You know, and I remember bringing home like National Geographic magazines that talked about, you know, early humans and hominids, and I was fascinated by archaeology and ancient peoples. And you know, my parents were like, well, that's not what you're taught. You know, that's not what God teaches us. And I was so confused by all of that because science and, you know, all those things really appealed to me. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just do my own thing and believe in what I want. You know, I mean, I didn't need to change their opinions, but it didn't need to be mine. And so those were some revelations I had as a pretty young child.
So it's interesting to me because in some ways, it sounds like your childhood, no boundaries, go explore, be self-sufficient, be able to solve problems. But at the same time, your parents had beliefs that you were learning are different from your own. It's like you were also developing your own beliefs at a very young age about big things in life.
Yeah, it just, you know, things just spoke to me, you know, and I just didn't understand why the things that were like in my heart that I thought were good were not good, you know, growing up in that kind of religious background. My mom sowed the seeds of all of this, but then when I started to kind of come up with my own ideas, then it was scary because it weren't exactly like theirs.
Right.
You know, like my decision after I graduated from college to join the Peace Corps, they were not a fan of that.
I would love to learn a little bit more about how you got to the Peace Corps too, because I do think it's an example of you marching to what's in your heart and your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why season 3 of Purpose Project exists is because I believe people hold back on their purpose because of social norms.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's not that I do that on purpose.
Right.
I'm just annoyed with everything that's going on around me, and I just want to do my own thing. And damn to everybody else, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I don't know how another way to be, really.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the Peace Corps. I cut you off. You're going to mention, you're saying how your decision to go into the Peace Corps was something that they didn't want.
So when I was graduating from college, well, back up, they didn't really want me to go to college. They felt that doing a trade school or something less expensive would be a better option for me. Neither one of them went to college. They did trade schools. And I really wanted to go to college because I loved learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to continue to learn. So my parents said that if I wanted to go to college, that was going to be my decision and I would have to pay for it. So I paid for all of my college by myself. When I was finishing up college at Ball State, I wasn't quite ready to get a real job. I wasn't done on, having adventures. And I wasn't ready for whatever that next step was. I didn't even know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what to do, kind of, not that I felt lost. I just felt like there needed to be another step, and no one around me had that step for me.
Right.
And so I felt like I needed to do something. And I really just wanted to go on a big adventure somewhere. Yeah. And so I looked into a couple of different options. I looked into teaching English in Japan.
Uh-huh.
But those programs became so popular that you actually had to know Japanese as well, which I did not know. So I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So I was like, well, what about that Peace Corps? Like go on a big adventure with the Peace Corps. And at Ball State, nobody knew how to apply for the Peace Corps. There wasn't anybody at Ball State in the international studies or anything.
Wow.
They're like, well, we have no idea how you apply for the Peace Corps. So I had to figure that out.
I'm going to figure it out.
I did.
Charge my course.
Yeah. So I applied for the Peace Corps. And so I graduated Ball State in April. And I left for the Peace Corps on January 2nd that following year. And my parents were somewhat horrified that I wanted to do that. It was more because, okay, well, now you have a college degree. Now you're supposed to get a job and start making money and get married and have kids and all of those things. And I was all like, I don't know. None of that sounds great. So they were disappointed. And then they were also kind of scared because it was scary to them to think about me, leaving the country. And you don't get to choose where you go. So it was late summer when I got my papers that I was going to Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And my parents were horrified again.
Right.
Down to Central America due to the Soviet presence and the nuclear threat and all of those things. So that was my parents' idea of Nicaragua. Right. And it was sort of mine too. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So I left and went down there, and I was down there for almost 2.5 years and absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, it was really hard.
Right.
Absolutely loved it. So happy I did it.
What were you doing there for 2.5 years?
In the Peace Corps, they have different sectors, and there are different sectors depending on the region or the country.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, so this was in 1997, the Peace Corps had only been back in the country for 5 or 6 years since the Civil War. So we were the 15th group back in the country, and they were doing about 3 groups a year. So it'd been about 5 years. And my group was sustainable agriculture and environmental education.
Okay.
So I did both of those things in my village. So I worked with kids, and I also worked with farmers on more natural farming techniques that were less chemical intensive. And in countries like that, they use a lot of herbicides and pesticides that are not allowed in the developed world because they're extremely dangerous to the environment and to people. And
Right.
so, trying to help people come up with different solutions. But I mostly worked with kids, and I absolutely loved it.
Oh.
Yeah. So the kids were great. And so I did some science and environmental education classroom work in the elementary schools in my village. But then I also worked with the Sandinista organization that went out into the smaller communities, like isolated communities, and did work on like public health and education and things like that. So I tagged along with that organization and worked in even more rural settlements. These were even smaller than villages, like they have a well,
Yeah.
a schoolhouse or a room for a school. And I would go out and do science, natural resource kind of lessons, fun stuff with the kids.
Yeah.
They didn't have textbooks or anything. So even just bringing books out to these communities and sitting around in a circle and reading books together was a big thing for a lot of these kids.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was great. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So you mentioned your parents were disappointed with you wanting to go to college and then disappointed with the Peace Corps. When you think back to that, how did their disappointment make you feel?
I really didn't care.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry,
Right.
that's not what you wanted for me.
Uh-huh.
So do my own thing.
Yeah.
Again, I just don't
Yeah.
really care, I guess. I mean, I'm not hurting anybody.
Right.
I'm not like doing anything.
Absolutely. Right.
So like, why should I care if they're disappointed?
Right. How did their disappointment look to you? Was it just words, or were they pleading?
No, it was just more like I think it was their concern for me, both my safety, but also, you need to like be a grown up and start
Right.
making money and,
Yeah.
those kind of things. So, I wasn't like I was offended by it, it's just that I was doing my own thing
Right.
and they didn't approve.
Right. Well, and I mean, you paid for your own college, so it's not like you needed their
Mm-mm.
approval or support or any of it.
No.
How did their perception evolve after you left for the Peace Corps and after you were there?
Well, once I was there, I think they felt a lot better about it.
Uh-huh.
I was in constant communication with my parents,
Mhm.
so that helped too. And so once email became a thing, which came about shortly after, I wasn't able to email in my village, but at least once a week I either called or they got an email from me or something.
Right.
And they were fine with it. I mean, my parents are good people. They were pleased that I decided to donate part of my life to help other people. They were very supportive. They just were looking out for me.
Yeah,
They were just being
they were,
parents.
yeah.
Being parents.
Yeah.
And I was just being the stubborn kid, doing my own thing. But, I didn't feel upset that they were upset.
Uh-huh.
I understood.
One of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on is I see you living your life to the beat of your own drum. You're not letting social norms sway you. But I'm curious, from your perspective, do you ever see getting pushed up against social norms and it having an impact on you?
With my different parts of my career over the years, one thing that being a woman, obviously it does affect your career. I mean, it can't not, I try not to make that an excuse, so my first job out of college before I went into the Peace Corps, I got a job at an environmental engineering firm. And my direct supervisor was a woman. She hadn't been there very long. She wasn't happy there. And she made it very clear to me that she's like, after you leave this job, don't ever let anybody pay you less because you're a woman. And I didn't quite understand that exactly at the time. But then I found out that I was getting paid $7.50 an hour with a college degree in a related field. My counterpart, which was male, did not have a college degree, working the same job, and was getting paid 3 times what I was getting paid. And I knew it was just a temporary job.
Right.
Because I knew I was going to the Peace Corps. They didn't know that, but I knew it, When I took the job, I knew it was just going to be for, 5 or 6 months. But I was like, oh, this is a real thing.
Right.
And she had a master's degree and was getting paid a quarter of what her male counterpart was getting paid.
Wow.
And so I really took that to heart. I was like, okay, I'm going to take that little thing and I'm going to put it somewhere, because I'm not going to let that ever affect my career.
Right.
I mean, being a woman in a man's world, but I've just never, ever, ever thought that being a woman was in any way a detriment or an obstacle to anything I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's ever been a pay issue either. And a lot of it's because I've worked a lot of government jobs, and obviously you get equal pay. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman for your job. But I've never really, like, if something doesn't work out, either I deal with it or I move on and get another job. I'm not ever going to let something like hold me up, And so, like, in my current work, when I've been working in construction for over 10 years now, and I've had this question a lot by either other women or even men, like, how do you work in that industry as a woman? And I'm like, well, what difference does it make? I don't think, no, there's not a lot of women. There's not. And when I see another girl on the construction site, it's like two dogs that see each other at a dog park. They're like, oh, there's a dog. Oh my God, there's a dog. There's a dog. I can see him. And I'm like, oh, there's a girl. Look, there's a girl. So in that respect, it's different, obviously, because I'm a girl. But other than that, it has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Despite what movies make you think of construction workers that are a bunch of sexist pigs whistling at women, they're not really like that by any means. And out of all the different types of work I've done in my life, this has been the most male-centered and the field that I feel the most respected.
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of my other positions were more female-dominated industries, or, working in government, working in parks departments and things like that. And I really, when I walk into a room or go to a meeting or walk out on my job site, I don't feel disadvantaged. I feel respected, and I'm treated that way.
Yeah. Did you have to earn that respect? Or was that there at the very beginning?
Yes and no. Because there's not a lot of women in construction. Most women are in management, supervisory roles. So in that respect, just being a woman, automatically I'm in some sort of authority.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
In their mind, right?
Yeah. So that helps.
Yeah.
And then for part of my career in construction, I actually worked for the Department of Transportation. And in that role, I developed training that a lot of contractors had to take.
Okay.
So when I left and went into the private sector, I already had street cred. So a lot of the players in road construction knew me, knew my name, and knew I knew stuff, and that the stuff I knew was helpful to them, and it was stuff they needed to know, or they needed to know somebody who knew it. So I kind of walked onto the scene with some street cred.
Nice.
And my attitude. And while I think it's funny that I'm often by other men described as being rather intimidating, I think it's hilarious. Because I don't feel like in any sort of way I'm an intimidating person.
I know, and I don't feel that either. It makes me laugh too.
But, it's like, even though I'm not a mom, I'm a mom out there, and I can give those guys a stink eye, and they know I'm pissed, and they know what they need to do.
Right.
And they're like, yes, ma'am, we'll get it done. It's almost an advantage.
Yeah.
I think it's an advantage.
Yeah.
Woman in my career.
As you're talking, the one thing going through my head is Michele just has clarity in what she wants and how she wants to be in life. And maybe that is also a place where people struggle, is in that clarity. Do you feel clear with?
Yeah, I feel like just moving in the direction I need to move in.
Yeah.
You don't always know.
Yeah.
You can just keep moving forward. Like if you run into something and you move around it, keep going. I don't have the patience to let things stop me and make me feel like I don't know what to do. Like if you're at home, or you're home on the weekends, you're cleaning up, you get like sidetracked 100 million times by like, oh, but I can always come back and finish the tasks that, you know, I set out to do.
Right.
And so, yeah, you get turned around and pulled in directions and run into obstacles, but you just jump over them or move around them, you know, run the other way and then get back on course and then just keep moving forward.
It's a mindset. And have you always had this mindset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like anything that has ever tried to stop me, it doesn't stop me, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I just keep moving and figure it out.
Right.
I'm not like plagued by indecision and don't know what to do and you know, scared to do something or whatever.
So you don't have fear?
I do. Well, I mean, yeah, I have self-doubt and fear, but I feel like I can't stop moving forward, you know? And I understand when people do get stuck in that and they can't move, you know? Just like being scared to death and not, you know, so like if something scares you, some people will just freeze. I run or I fight, you know? I'm not going to freeze. Either I'm going to like throw a punch or I'm going to run, you know, but I'm not going to stand there and freeze. And that's just probably my personality. You know, I don't know if you can, some people are just going to freeze.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. And yeah, the thing that's going through my head is you don't let fear hold you back. You're always moving forward. When you move forward, is it a calculated forward or are you just like...
I'm just like...
It's instinctual.
Yeah. Which is probably not the best way to go through life. I mean, sometimes I just, you know, feel like I'm an out of control car, just... but I'm going to keep going.
Well, someone said that when it comes to consciousness, there's two types. There's the intellectual, the studying, but then there's the instinctual.
Like the reptile brain.
And it seems like you operate more like a gut level. Do you spend time to tune in to your gut and your instincts?
I think one of my flaws is not thinking things through sometimes because I just plow ahead.
You go.
Yeah. And so sometimes I have to remind myself to like just take a second, think about this before you just plow into it.
Right. Yeah.
And as I get older, that becomes a little easier, I guess. Makes you kind of like, hey, maybe think about this for a second before I run my mouth or like whatever, right? And so that's, you know, a constant battle I have.
When you're plowing ahead, is that coming from your gut? Is it just like, I just know what I need to do type thing? Because you're not thinking, you're not like putting a plan together. No. It's just you're reacting to what something in your body is telling you the way around. It's
probably not the best way to approach it.
I know.
But, I mean, it's gotten me in trouble. Probably will continue to get me in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, again, that's just something I'm trying to do more often is just take a second, think before you say something or send that email or whatever it is. Like, you don't have to be 100% in your reptile brain all the time, you know, because that can get you in trouble, obviously.
Yeah. But I think the opposite is true, too. I do think sometimes people get so frozen and they get so much into logical thinking side and then don't ever move. So it's a balance, I guess.
It is.
And I think the balancing can be really hard. Like, how do you know when to lean in on the instincts, like the gut, versus the thinking?
Yeah. I guess when you don't, you know, you made the wrong choice.
After the fact.
And then experience just helps you make a better decision next time.
Yeah. So when you think about where your life is headed, what do you see for you in the future?
I'm very content in my current career path. I really like it. I don't, you know, because I'm 52 now, the next step, I guess, is retirement, whenever that is. And I'm fine with everything the way it is until I get to that next stage in my life.
Yeah.
So I guess I have no plans on changing anything because that change is inevitable at some point, on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of keeping everything going the same way it's going until ready for that next step.
When I hear you say that, in my mind, I'm thinking Michele is just living every day of her life. Instead of like this working towards this. And I mean, not that you're not doing that.
Yeah.
I have a constant, like almost a daily conversation with myself about what am I supposed to be doing with my life, instead of just like, Leslie, just live your life.
Well, I mean, everybody kind of has those thoughts. This has been probably 20 years ago. I went through kind of a lonely, dark period of my life and was kind of like, well, what have I done? Like, what is this life that I have? I'm single. I have no kids. I'm not dating anybody. I'm working a job that pays crap. Like, why is this my life?
Right.
And then you get into like really dark ideas. And I thought, well, you know what? I should have just been like Jane Goodall and just moved to the jungle and studied butterflies or something for the rest of my life. Like, at least I would have had something to show for my life, and you can't get into those kind of situations. You don't have to be Jane Goodall. You know what I mean? Right. You don't have to be like an underpaid government worker, miserable either.
Right.
You can find some happy medium, and so it took a while to get out of that rut and change career focuses and get on a different path. But it's only natural, I think, to get caught up in that. Like, what am I doing? It's weird because I don't know any other way, but I don't have kids, so I haven't built a life and have like, oh, look, I made this child and I've helped this child grow to an adult, and you have that to show for.
Right.
I don't have that.
Yeah.
So then you kind of feel like, well, what have I been doing with my whole life? But it's not. You don't have to feel that way.
Yeah.
I didn't get stuck in that type of thinking. I can contribute. Good. It doesn't have to be because I've raised a biological child. I have other people in my life that I've been able to help and influence and guide and then have that reciprocated. You don't want to have other people or have society make you feel like you aren't what you should be, or you've not done what you should have done.
Yeah. So how do you do that? So take us back to the dark days, and how did you get out of that?
Well, I mean, you just have to make a decision. It's like, am I just going to be miserable and depressed and hate my life, or am I going to change it?
Right. Yeah.
There's no other option. You don't want to be miserable. You don't want to feel useless and worthless. Find another purpose. Find another path. Because as a human being, you have value and you can contribute. You just have to find that place. And it's not just one place or one path or one spot or one person. That evolves through your life, and you can always find a way.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. And it's not about being brave or determined. It's just survival. If that's how you need to survive with your spirit, then go for it. Make the change. Do something different. Don't stay where you are, because you can do whatever you want.
Well, and I think it's a lot about mindset, because I do think sometimes people are happier in their misery than the idea of facing a fear and being courageous.
Well, they think that that's easier, because it takes effort to be miserable. As much as it takes effort to not be miserable.
Exactly.
And you just have to make the decision on what you want to be.
Yeah. Where do you want your effort to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like it takes effort to smile and to frown.
Yeah.
Which way do you want to go?
Are there certain beliefs that you have that have guided you through life, or that are guiding you now?
Understand everybody has their own demons and their own things that they're dealing with. You're not the only one. You know what I mean? It's not all about you and your feelings. So try to keep that in perspective and just know that you just have this one life to live.
Yeah.
Living your own life doesn't just affect you, it affects other people. So keeping that in perspective, that, you're a piece of a puzzle, you're a piece of a big puzzle, and you can't be selfish.
Right.
You have to be selfish in a way to survive, but you have to know that you affect other people. You kind of live in a spider web of interconnectedness in the universe. Everything is connected. And you have a duty to do something with your life and help others in their life, however that is. And it can be the smallest thing, it can be a huge thing, whatever it is, but you have to live it daily. You can't just, once a year, like, oh, I'm gonna, buy some Christmas presents for some, poor kids. No, you have to, you don't need to have some grand thing that you can show off. I've never been like that kind of person. You just live your life to where you create kindness and love in your space and in your universe, because that's all connected and everybody needs that.
I love that belief.
Yeah.
I would like to think that I practice that, but the idea of being really intentional daily with that, yes, this is my life, I need to live it to the fullest, but also in a way that elevates those around me, and in making that more of a daily consciousness piece for me.
Because we're all connected by these tiny little threads, and we can break them or we can make them stronger.
Lately, I've been thinking about how can I contribute to the evolution of humanity, and that's the making your little thread stronger, so that the evolution of that decades, centuries from now, just continues to strengthen.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to figure out, and we do that, and our unconscious does that, which is really important. Just remembering that everything is connected, and you don't want to poison the rest of the web. You want to, like you said, strengthen it.
I don't know why, but when you said that, I immediately thought about how when we bring our negativity with us, everyone can feel that, and they absorb it too.
Yeah.
And so it's an example of the connectedness. And so, okay, let's not bring the negativity. Let's bring the positivity, the love, the caring, the understanding with us, so that people absorb that.
Yeah. And you do it because you're a very friendly, happy person, and even when you don't feel like that, you just have, it's not like putting on a face or, but you just have to say, all right, well, I'm out there, I need to be positive and not be negative, always approaching everything with a smile, and coming into everything in a positive way instead of coming into it negative. The guys at work, they always say, they're always like, you just always walk up to us with like this big smile on your face, like you're so happy, and then you start yelling at us, but we don't realize it because you're so friendly about it. And he's like, and then we're like, oh, okay, we'll do it. But I'm like, well, yeah, if I got out of my truck and put on my hard hat and walked up to him and started cussing him out, because that's how they talk to each other, that doesn't work well. And so I do.
Yeah.
And then
and you get it done.
I do, because I got a smile on my face. And then when I get really mad, they know it.
That's when the side eye comes out.
Yes.
No. Well, I think a point there is we can still be kind and direct to get what we need, even in life too. Yeah. What advice do you have for people out there who might be listening that are pushing up against the social norm or letting social norms prevent them from pursuing their purpose?
Well, social norms only become a hindrance if you let them. They don't have to be your norm. And so there's no reason why what somebody else says has to be your reality.
Yeah.
Trying to better everything around you. Don't be limited by what society says.
Yeah.
There's just no reason for it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And we live in a country where we don't have to follow these societal norms.
Exactly. Right.
Why let that limit you? It can be somebody else's norm. It doesn't have to be yours. And you're allowing other people or society to create a script for you to live by. And that seems dangerous. You need to be able to be the author of your own story.
Love that. Yes, be the author of your own life. Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, nothing to think of.
I don't think I've ever told you, Michele, but I am in awe of you. I really am. You're just a person that I'm so grateful to have in my life. You're a person that I look at and think, I want to live my life like Michele, because she's in charge of her life. She is the author of her book. And in some ways, I'm learning to be that for myself, but in a lot of ways, I have a long way to go.
Y'all do.
And I thank you for being on the show.
As I reflect on this conversation with Michele, I'm reminded of a quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was one of the 5 good Roman emperors and a Stoic philosopher. The quote goes like this: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." For many of us, obstacles stop us. They cause us to pause, to doubt, or to retreat. But Michele charges forward, not recklessly, but intuitively. When something stands in her way, she moves through it. And maybe that's part of what it means to live life to the beat of our own drum. Not waiting for the path to be perfectly clear, not waiting for permission, but trusting that the very obstacles in front of us might be the path itself. Michele, thank you for your friendship and thank you for joining me on the show. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Keep listening to your rhythm and trusting that sometimes what stands in the way is actually showing you the way. Purpose Project is brought to you for education and for entertainment purposes. This podcast is not intended to replace the advice that you would receive from a licensed therapist or doctor or any other qualified professional.